Hi everyone, welcome back in another amazing project where we're going to be building this multi-step form. So the context that we're going to be using to be able to create this multi-step form is creating a new project. So that's the context that I used for this project. So it is a multi-step form. So we're going to be using Shadcn for the UI library. We're going to use other key libraries like Zod, React to hook form to be able to validate each step before we can go to the next one. We're going to use tanstack React table because we're going to be using a table. So as I'm going to show you in the third step. So this is the first step, as you can see. So those are the fields that we're going to be using for the first step. And also I did choose multi fields from Shadcn just to know how to work with along with the React hook form. So here, if I want to go to the next step, if I click on here, nothing's going to be happening because some of the fields are still empty. But as soon as I update these fields, so eventually the error is gone. And also when I add this, the error is gone and I can be able to choose the project category. So we're going to have the calendar to choose from for the start date and the same for the target date. And if I click on next, then I can go to the next step. So this is the next step. So it is called the team and roles. So we can be able to choose the team member and the team leader. So eventually in this project, we're going to be building this complex component that I'm going to show you, which is adding a new member. So when I click on add, so we're going to have this awesome dialog. And we're going to use, of course, Shadcn to make things a bit easier. So here I can be able to add the member. So because this has already been added, so it's going to be under this category. But as soon as I click on this, so it's going to be added in the already added member. So I can delete this and I can add another one. And if I don't choose any member. So as you can see right off the bat, I'm going to have this error because use the React hook form. It's going to do this in real time. So the most challenging part in this project is how to be able to link the React hook form library with the custom components that we're going to be building. And this is what we're going to be learning in this actual project. And notice here when I want to go to the next step, I can't because I need to select at least one member. So also I can be able to, so let me add a member, at least one. And here I'm going to have this drop down or this command component to be able to actually choose the leader. So if I choose the John Lee or this one, which is a team member, when I click on this, as you can see, so we're going to have a flag in here just to let the user know that this is the team leader. So now I can be able to safely go to the next part or the next step, which is choosing the task. So here, as you can see right at the bat, we're going to have this error because there is no task has been selected. So here when I click on select task, we're going to have this dialog and we're going to have this table. So we're going to use React task stack table to be able to actually render this in this table. And here I can be able to select the task. So first I want to just show you when I click on next, nothing's going to happen because there is no task has been added. So as soon as I select the tasks, for example, let's select 3 tasks. So as you can see, the error is gone, and then I can go to the next step. So right now I'm in the final step. So here I can be able to choose the budget. And if, for example, I do this, so we're going to have this error and I can't go to the next step, of course. So as soon as I change things like this, and notice that the formatting is going to be done automatically. So we're going to use another library for this. So you can be able to choose the cost tracking method and the resource allocation. So when I click on next, then we can be able to review all the information that we added. So as you can see, all the information that we added, we're gonna find them in here. And when I click on last project, so we're gonna have finally this alert dialog. So as you can see, there is a pretty heavy project to build, and we're gonna be learning a lot of things from this project. So if you are very interested about building this project, still stick with me till the end of this video. Hi everyone, welcome back. So as you can see, I already created my project by using Next.js, and I already opened up the project as you can see. So I'm not going to get into this step because you already know how to be able to do this, but I'm going to show you some of the changes that I did before we can start building our project. So the first change that I did, if we go to the package.json, I downgraded to React 18. So instead, because Next.js come right now at this time with React 19. So I downgraded to React 18. As you can see, for React and React DOM, change it from 19 to 18, and the same thing do it for the types. So I'm going to show you the reason why I did so. Because the component UI library that we're going to be using is Shadcn. And because it's still having some issues with React 19, if you go to this page, so you will have some problems. And to be honest with you, I don't want to use this kind of solution. So to be able to do this, because I could have some problems like deploying the project into Vercel when it's going to be compiled. So to be able to avoid this, I'm going to downgrade to React 18 since we're not going to use all the new features from React 19. And I think React 18 is more than enough to be able to create our project. So after doing this, and I showed you what I did first, the next thing that I did is I installed the Shadcn framework or UI library, sorry, and we're going to be selecting the framework React Next.js, sorry, and then make sure to copy this and here go back to your project and open up your terminal and paste it in here and hit enter. So I'm not going to do this because I've already installed this, but what you will have is these questions, so just stick with the default answers. And after this, what you will have into the project added is this component.json, and also uh, if we go to the global .css, so if we go to the app folder and the global .css, so this code is going to be added, as well as this folder inside of it, the util.ts. So this is what's going to be added inside the project when you install the Shadcn. And lastly, what I did is I applied or I installed or I added the Poppins font, which is the font that I use for all the projects. And to be able to do this, we're going to go to the layout.tsx. And here we are going to need to add this Poppin object from the package, which is the fonts coming from Google. And then we are going to add all of these properties from this Poppins object, and then we're going to use this Poppins state, and we're going to add the class name property inside the class name of the body tag. So, as you can see, if we go back to the project and uh, I'm already running my project. So as you can see, the Poppins font is already applied in the project, and everything is ready to go. So after we set up our project, so the next step that I did is I created this stepper. So this stepper is fully working. So when I click on next, as you can see, like we are gonna to be able to know which step that is active. So eventually the colors are gonna be changing, but also we're gonna be showing the name of the step and the actual step. And notice here we're having this also changes, which is a component that changes whenever we are changing the going to the next step. So if we go to the third step, actually the same thing is going to happen. The same thing for the fourth, and finally when we go to the final step, actually the name of the button it's going to be changing, and when I click on it, so we're going to have this simple alert dialog saying form submitted. And also when I go back to the first step, so this it's going to be disabled, so don't go over the actual step. So there are going to be a lot of code that I'm going to explain, but don't worry, I'm going to explain everything step by step. So that is the logic that we are going to use for the step. So we're having many elements in here, but the first thing that I'm going to start with is the stepper data. So the stepper data, which is an object, each object is going to have the icon, the label, which is the name of the step, and the content. And the content, it's going to be actually React node type, meaning that it's going to only accept a component. So each time that we are going from one step to another, we are going to actually render the content. So for the first object, the context it's going to be the step one component. And the step one component is actually stored inside this folder. So to be able to organize things, so each component, it's going to be in its own file. So this is what I showed you whenever we are going through the steps. So for the first step, so we're going to just show this. Eventually later on, this it's going to be filled up with components. So the same thing for the step number 2, step number 3, 4, and 5. So first I want to just show you the baseline that we're gonna start upon to be able to create this whole stepper. So after we created the stepper data, so now I'm gonna go back to the page.tsx. So here, what we're having, so let's ignore this just for a moment. And the first that we're going to do, we're going to create the state called the current step, where we're going to be saving the index whenever we are clicking on the next or the back button. So next we're having these helper functions. So I'm going to show you why we did so at the bottom of our JSX. So we're having these two functions. So these two functions uh, are gonna help us to go next or back depending on uh, the step that you want to go to. So for the handle next button to be able to go from one step to another, so first we're going to check if the current step is less than the step dot length. Then we're going to update or increment the current step by one. For the handle back function, we're going to check if the step is equal or more than 0, then we can digress by 1. And this is the JSX, as you can see. So we're having the stepper, which is this component. So I'm going to get into it. And as you can see, we're going to use the step array, and we're going to use the current step as an index. And then we're going to use the content to be able to render the step that we want. So if we go back to the stepper.data, so if the current step is 0, so we're going to render the step 1. If it is 1, we're going to render the step 2, and so on. So this is what it's going to enable us to do so, and we're going to rely mainly on the current step as an index to be able to actually render the component, and we're going to use the property component content, which is a React node type. And here at the bottom, we're having this navigation button. So we're having the first button, which is the button to be able to go back to go to the previous step, and we're having the button to be able to go to the next step. So here just to be able to organize things for the naming of the button, I just added them at the top. For back, so it's going to be back, next, it's going to be next step. At submit, it's going to be launch project. So as I showed you here into the stepper, so if we go to the final step, so we're going to have the launch project instead of having the next button. And here, so this is the turning operator that is going to allow us for this. So here at the button, the back button, so we're having the disabled is first step. So if we go back to the first step, so it's going to be disabled. And this is where these two helper functions come into play. So we're having the is first step, so it's going to be uh, true only if the current step is equal to 0. So meaning that when it is true and it is added inside the disable property of the button, so it's going to be automatically disabled. And here at the button, so we're using this turning operator. So to be able to know that we are in the last index, so we're going to use this only if the current step is minus or is below than the step that length minus 1. So if this is true, meaning that uh, we're not at the final step, so we're going to use the next button. Otherwise, we're going to use the submit text. And the on-click event listener, it's going to just open up the alert dialog saying the form submitted. So this is the main logic that we're going to be using for our stepper. And finally, I'm going to go to the stepper just to be able to actually render this whole element. So we're gonna have some code as well here. So for the stepper is going to accept the step, which is the steps that I showed you, the array, and also it's going to accept the current step. And this is the actual GSX. So we're going to map through each step. And here we are going to create a div. And inside of this div, we're gonna have in two components, the step indicator and the step label. So the step label, which is this component, to be able to actually render the step here at the top, the number of the step, and also the name or the label of the step. And for the indicator, it's going to actually show the icon based on the current step. So if we go to the step indicator, so it's going to accept the icon and the is active. So the is active, we're going to rely on it to be able to change the color. So here, as you can see, we're going to have so the user can know that we are at the current step. So the color it's going to be changing. So it's going to be dependent upon the is active. So if it is true, we're going to use the background primary, which is the primary color that Shadcn uses. Otherwise, it's going to be gray. And this active, it's going to come from the parent component that is coming from here. So only if in this component. So only if the current step is equal to the index, meaning that the condition is true, so it's going to go down to this functional component. And then based on this condition, we're going to use this background primary color. And also the same thing here for the icon. So if it is active, we're going to use the text primary. Otherwise, we're going to use this gray color. So this is what is happening just to be able to actually differentiate the color of the icon on the color of the background. So that's why we did so. So this is basically how we can be able to create our stepper. So it's a little bit long, but this is the logic that we're going to be using ahead to be able to actually complete our project. So after we created the stepper, the next thing that I added is the text. So we're having the purpose or the objective of the step, and at the bottom we're having the subtext.
So the same thing that I did for all the steps as you can see. So I did some changes in the code to be able to actually render this, and I'm going to show you what I did to be able to do this. So let's go back to the VS Code, and here, the first thing that I'm going to start with is the stepper data.tsx. So here, as you can see, I updated the code, and the thing that I added is this object. So here, so instead of just using all of these elements and just adding them directly inside the step array. So what I did, I just created them in one object, and then we're gonna use them inside our array. So for each step, so we're having the step one, so it is an object. And inside this object, we're going to create two elements, so two properties, the purpose and the subtext. So just to make sure that everything is organized. So the same thing is gonna be done for the step 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then to be able to access to each element from the step that we want, so I added first this purpose and the subtext properties. So eventually we need to update the step type. So make sure to add the purpose and the subtext here inside the step type, otherwise TypeScript is going to throw an error. And then we're going to pass down these properties inside the component step one. So eventually in the step one, we need to add some props so we can be able to accept these properties from here. So this is what I did. So I added the props, the purpose, and the subtext, and this is their signature. So instead of adding them directly inside the function header, so I added them in this interface because as we move on, we're gonna do more updates into the interface because we're gonna add fields to each component. And then we're going to take each prompt and then we're going to put it into the GSX to be able to render it as I showed you. And the same thing that I did for the step 2, as you can see. So the only thing that is different here is the name of the interface, the same thing that I did for the step 3, the same for the step 4, and finally the same thing for the step number 5. So the next step that we are gonna do is we're gonna start adding more fields. So eventually we're gonna start by the step number 1, and then we are as I move on. So I'm gonna explain each thing that I did for each step. So the next thing that I did, I added all these fields into the step number 1. So as you can see, we're having 6 fields. We're having the project name, we're having the project description. So as I'm typing stuff into the text area, so this the number of characters is going to be updated, and also we're having this drop down that we can select from. We're having the start date, so we're going to use the calendar component from Shadcn. So all of the components that we are using here are from Shadcn. And finally, we're having the input for the client name. So let's go back to the VS Code. And the first thing that I did, I added this step 1 fields folder just for organization purpose to be able to just put all the fields uh, separately in one file and put them all in one folder. And eventually to be able to render this, all of these elements, we need to call them and add them into the step 1 function. So we're having the project name, the project description, and the project category that are going to be in one div, and the other ones are going to be in the other div. And here, as you can see, we are using the grid display to be able to just put them like this into our page. So that's why we did this structure. So now let's go to the project name, and first we need to install the input and the label. So you need to install this. So if you didn't do so, so all you have to do is just go to the Shadcn website and just type in the input, and all you have to do just copy this and paste it into your terminal and hit enter, and it's going to be installed in your project. And we're going to be using for this component the label component as well. The same thing, copy this and paste it into a terminal. So to not have the errors at the top, because the compiler didn't find the component to be able to use it inside the GSX. So first we're having the label and we're having the input. So basically, so this is what we are gonna have at this moment. And at the bottom of the JSX, we're going to have the error icon. And here we're going to use it to be able to show the error once we start working with the React hook form library. So this is for the project name. So the next component is the description. The description. So the description, we're going to use the text area. Again, first, go back to the Shadcn website, and here copy this and paste it into a terminal. And so I'm going to start explaining what this code does. So we're having the description state, and also uh, we are setting the maximum length, and we are storing it inside this constant. So here inside the GSX, we're having the label, and inside the text area, so we're having all of these properties. So the value, it's going to be linked to the description state. And as we are changing stuff, so this onChange event listener, it's going to be triggered so we can be able to update the description state. So that's why we link this with the text area component. And here we're having this div, so we are going to show the error, and also we are going to update this part to be able to actually show how many characters that we typed. So we're going to use the description dot length, and also we're going to use the max length. So every time that we are changing the description, so eventually the characters are going to be changing, and because we're using the length property, so eventually the numbers are going to be changing as well. So this is for the project description, so this part. So now we're going to go to the project category. So let me close all of these tabs, and I'm gonna go to the project category.tsx. So first thing first, make sure to install the select component to be able to use all of these elements. So here, all you have to do just to search for the select component and install it from this command line. Copy it here in your terminal and paste it in here to be able to install this component in your project. So now let's start talking about this file. So here we are going to define the string literals that we're going to use for our category type. So we're going to use a union type to be able to define how many of them we're going to use just for TypeScript safety. And here we're using the select item type, which is the label and the icon. So this type, we're going to use it with the selected items array to constraint the types that we're going to use for each object. So every time that we add something like this, so eventually it's going to add the error because we define the type of each object should be inside the selected item. So that's the benefit of using TypeScript. So we're having the label and we're having the icon. And these icons, we're going to use them from the React icons library.
So in the project category, sorry, first we're going to define the select category state. So we're going to assert it as a type of category that we defined it at the top. So eventually the software development, it's going to be the default string literal type. And before I start talking about this function, first I need to go through this GSX. So this GSX, the actual tip that I do is I just copy this from Shadcn and I paste it in here, and I just do the modifications needed to be able to get the output that I want in my project. So eventually we're going to have the label for the project category, which is this one. And then we're going to have the select component, which is the parent component. So the value it's going to be linked to the select category, and each time that the value changes, the on value function it's going to be changing. So it's going to accept the value as a string, and then uh, once we took the value, we're going to find the selected items inside the selected items array. So that's why we use the find method, and we're going to loop through each item. And if the item that label is equal to the value that is coming from the prompt, then we're going to store our element inside the selected item. And then we want to check if this is not undefined. So as you can see, when I hover over this, it could be the selected item type or undefined. So that's why we did use the if statement. And then we can be able to update the selected category safely in this block. So after this, we're having the trigger, meaning that the button that we click on it. So this is the part. So eventually we're going to show the element that we selected on whenever we clicked on the item. So to be able to do this, so we're going to use the selected items. So eventually, in the selected content inside of it, we're going to use the selected items to be able to actually render each element inside the selected items. So the child component of selected content, it's going to be selected item. So we're going to take the item that label and the item that value. And also we're going to take the icon and the item that label. So the icon, it's going to be inside this div. So we can have the icon here and this little rectangle that's the color. It's going to be a little bit dim than the color of the icon. So that's why we did this. So this is how we can create our project category component. So the next component that I'm gonna start explaining is the start date. So wherever that I'm going to explain for this component, it is the same logic for the target date component with a slight difference, which is that the target date always it's going to be selected for the next day. So we can't select the start date and the target date the same. So let's go to the component. So I'm going to go to the project start date, and eventually we need to install some components from Shadcn first. We need to install the popover, but also we need to install the calendar component. So again, all you have to do, just go back to the Shadcn website, and here just copy this command line, and also do this for the calendar. Copy this and paste it into a terminal to be able to install these components. So let's start talking about the project start date. So here, as you can see, we're having some code for our component. So the first thing that I did, as I did for the other components, to be able to actually store whatever that we are clicking on. So we need a state. So we're having the start date and the set start date. So it's going to be of type date or undefined. And the first value, uh, we're going to use the new date to be able to actually generate the current state. So before I start talking about these functions, what they do, first let's start talking about the GSX. So again, the tip that I use to be able to start from scratch building this component. So all I have to do is just go to the pop over component, and in here, so the first thing that I did, so I added this part, so I pasted it in here, and then um, what I did, I added the calendar component. Um, so we're having the popover trigger, and then we're having the popover content. So the popover content, which is this one, so we're going to use the calendar component. So for the pop over, so we're having the pop over trigger, which is the button. So it's going to be the button. So the variant is going to be outline, and we're having the class name to be able to actually to be able to actually modify the styling of the button. And then we're going to use the calendar icon from I think from Lucid, so they're using it from Lucid React because Shadcn uses Lucid React library uh, as a default component for the icons. So here we are gonna use this journey operator. So if the start date is not undefined, then we're gonna use this format method, which is coming um, from this component that is installed automatically once we install the calendar component from Shadcn to be actually to render the date this format. So we're gonna use this built-in format method. Otherwise, we're gonna use this pick a start date span. And for the popover component, so meaning that whenever we are clicking on this, so the element that is going to be showing is the calendar of the component that we installed, which is the calendar. So we're adding the mode as a single. The selected date, it's going to be the start date. So the disabled, it's going to be this function. So I'm going to get into and the on select. So whenever we are clicking on the element inside the calendar, so this is going to be triggered. So let's go to first to this is date disable. So what this function does is disable the older dates in comparison to the current date. Uh, just to show you, like we're having these dates are completely disabled. So because of this function, and we're having the handle selected date to be able to actually select the date that we want. And just to be able to avoid that the date is going to be undefined, so we are going to use this if statement only if the date that is coming from the prompt is not undefined, then we can be able to update this start date by the date that is coming from the prompt. So this is basically how we can be able to create this component. And here we're having the target date, which is going to use the same logic. So if we go to the print date, so we're going to use the same logic, but the main difference here is only we can be able to select the next day. So that's why we added this function, which is the get next day first. So we need to calculate this, and then we're going to use whatever that is returned from this function, and we're going to put it inside the start date. And for the other components, so for the other logic, it's going to be the same. So finally, we're having the client name. So it's very, very basic component. So we're having the label and the input. So it's going to be the same thing for the project name. As you noticed here, we're not having the error because this is going to be optional. So there is no need to add the error element inside the JSX of this component. So as you can see, so this is the components that we added for the step number one. So we are only in the step number one, and as you can see, there is a lot of work that have been done to be able to create this step number one all fields. So the next thing, of course, we're going to be adding the fields for the next step. So in the next step or the second step, I added this component to be able to add the members. So it's going to be a complex and advanced component that we're going to be creating. So here, as you can see, these are the members. So this is the each member element, how it's going to look like. So we're having this when I click on this, so it's going to be actually deleted. So when there is no members at all, we're going to have this little text. And if we want to add a new member, so when I click on add member, so we're going to have this awesome dialog. So we can be able to search for the elements. And when I click on this, so as you can see, it's going to be updated in here automatically, and then we're going to have it in this section already added members, and for the other members that are not being selected are going to be stay uh, in the all members section. So when I click on this, so as you can see, it's going to be added as well. And this is what we're going to be building together. So let's go back to the VS Code. So the first thing that I want to start from is the data that we're going to be using for this component. So here, as you can see, I created a new file called step data. So this folder, so first we created the step two fields, and I created this folder which has all the files to for the team members component. And here we're having this data. And so first we're going to set the user type. So we're having the ID, the name, the email, and also we're having the role property, which is going to have these string literal types with the union types. So we're going to have the owner, the member, and the viewer. So when we click in here, so we're going to have this drop down to be able to select the element that we want or the actual role. And these are the objects that I showed you, the user objects. And finally, we're having the role areas that we're going to be using for our drop down. So now, if we go to the step two components. We're having the user and the set users. So we're gonna call first the users array that I showed you. And here we're having this team members component, which is the main component of our team members component that is going to accept the users as a prompt and the set users so we can be able to update the users array at the top. So now let's go to the team members functional component. So this team members functional component, it is responsible for this part that we are rendering in the step two functional component. So first, what we are going to do, we are going to set our prompts. So these are the definition of our objects in our prompts. So first, we are going to render the label, and here we are going to display the list of team members. So based on this condition, so uh, if the user is added, so or this condition is going to actually show the text, this text message when there is when the user or the is added property of the user object is false or all of them are false, and we're going to use the every built-in function from JavaScript. And if it's not the case, then we are going to actually iterate through the user. So we're gonna filter by the is added, and meaning that only if the user that have the is added property as true, then we are going to map through each element, and we're gonna call this single user functional component to be able to render each user like this with the icon, with the name, with the actual role, and also this if it is a leader. So because we're going to create another component to be able to actually choose the team leader, but I want to just focus now on how to be able to build this because it is already complicated to build. So here we are going to actually call this single user functional component, which is this component that is responsible for rendering the card of the user. And finally, we're going to have this for showing the error at the bottom, and also this member dialog, which is responsible for this button when I click on the add member. So this member dialog, it's going to be actually called. So I'm going to get into this, but first let's go through the single user component. So of course, as I showed you, the single user component accepts the user prompt and uh, the set user's prompt as well. So we're going to take these elements and we're going to render them like this into the JSX. So we're having this for the icon, we're having this for the user detail. So this is for the name, for the role, and if the user is leader, then we're going to show this flag with this color icon. And here we're having this close icon. And when I click on it, this actual function is going to be triggered as I showed you. So what we are doing here, we're going to just update the the user element um, by using the set users. So here we are going to update the users array in the parent component so it can change the is added property by using this code. So this is basically how to be able to handle this and to show all the team members that have the is added property as true in this component. So now I'm going to talk about the this dialog and how to be able to code it. So as I mentioned, so this is going to be triggered whenever we are clicking on the add member. So now let's go to the member dialog. So first we need to install the dialog and the command components from Shadcn. So make sure to go back to the Shadcn and type in the command and the dialog as I explained, and just type in the command line and the terminal and hit enter, and you are ready to go. So here in the member dialog, so we're going to access to this prompt. We're going to pass down these prompts. So the first thing that we're going to do, we are going to actually filter the already added users and the not added users. So by using the filter method, so based on the is added property, of course. So here, so this is a basic code of the dialog component, Shadcn component. So the most important thing that I want to show you here is this div. So how to be able to show the elements or the members that has been added at the top, and the remaining users are going to be the all members section. So this is this is what we're going to do. So we're going to check if the already added users length is more than 0. So this is going to be added in the command group. So the command group is this section. So it's going to be added into the already added members. So as you can see, the hidden, it's going to be this, and then we're going to use the already added users. So that's why we created these tests to filter out by the is added or not. So we're going to use only this array that we filtered by to be able to show it inside the already added members command group. And for the not added users, so we're going to do the same logic. So basically, this is what is helping us to be able to do this and leverage the command group component from Shadcn to be able to make this selection much easier to do rather than doing it by ourselves, which is going to take a lot more time. So after this, I'm going to show you the actual code to be able to, so whenever we are clicking on this, so it's going to be actually updating the user states so we can see the changes rendered in real time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the user item. So this is the user item, which is, so if we go back to the member dialog, so we're calling the user item for each element. So the user item is responsible for rendering each user item in our dialog selection. So this is basically what we're going to do. We're going to add the user and the set users as a prompt. So here, so this is the JSX that we are going to use for each user. Um, so we're having the icon, we're having the name and the role, and also we're going to use the is leader property to be able to show this flag as you can see. So this is the condition that we're using. And here we're using the roles drop down to be able to actually show the drop down. So this is the component. So I'm going to get into it. And here, so we're going to rely on the user that is added. So if it is true, we are going to add the button, which is this one. Otherwise, we're going to be adding this button. And basically, these two buttons are going to share the same function, which is the add or remove user. So if we go to this function, so this is what we are going to do. We are going to call the set user so we can be able to update the user state in the parent component. And then we are going to use this function to be able to actually switch or toggle the is added property based on the primary state of it. So if it was true, it's going to be false and vice versa. So this is basically how we can be able to do this. And finally, I'm going to show you the roles dropdown. So the roles dropdown, it's going to accept only the user as a prompt. So here, so this is the code to be able to render each item into the dropdown. So we're going to use the roles array from the step to data. So this is the data that we're going to be using for our dropdown. And then we are going to actually instantly update the roles state in here. And I need to use the set roles, so I want to just make things even more complex. So so that's for the actual dropdown. So hopefully that I explain everything step by step. But again, if you want to really understand this, you gotta practice this by your own hands. So after we build this team members component, the next component that we're going to be building is the team leader component to be able to actually select what members is going to be the leader of the project. So after we created the team members component, the next component that I added is the team leader. So I'm going to show you how it is working. So when I click on the add leader, so we're gonna have this pop over or this drop down, whatever you want to call it. And here when I click on, so since the this member is a leader, so we're gonna have this flag. So when I click on this button, so as you can see, this is going to be changing, but also it's going to be changing as well into the team members. So because Jackson Lee right now is the team leader, so when I click on this, so we're gonna find the flag here as well because we're gonna use the same state, which is the users, to be able to share across these two components. So and also we can be able to search for the member that we want, and also I can be able to select any member that I want as a leader. So let's go back to our VS Code. I'm going to show you how to be able to create this. But first I'm going to start from the parent component, which is the step2.tsx component. So here we're having this team leader component. It's going to accept the users and the set users as a prop, the same thing that we did for the team members. So if we go to the team leader, so I created this new folder called team leader folder. So we're going to have the main component, which is the team leader, but also we're going to have this pop over component, which is this one whenever we are clicking on the add leader button. So I'm going to get into it. But now let's talk about this team leader.tsx. So as I showed you, it's going to accept these props. So the first thing that we're going to do, we are going we need to know which user that is a leader. So we're going to so we're going to use the users array from the prompt, and we're going to use the find method, and based on the is leader property. So just as a reminder, if we go back to the step 2 data, so each object has or each user has the properties is added or is leader. So first we're gonna find which one that is leader. And then here we're having the label, we're having some text using the span tag. So based on the team leader, so if it is true, because it could be undefined since we're using the find method, so we're gonna use the single user component, which is this one that is responsible to render this little card here with the icon, the name, and the role. Otherwise, we are going to actually uh, show this span tag. And finally, we're going to use this pop over team leader, which is at the bottom, which is inside this border, which is this component whenever I click on the add leader. So this is the component, which is the pop over team leader. So here, so it's a basic component of single user. So we're going to render each card. So this is the icon, and this is the name, this is the role. So I'm not gonna get into this. It's pretty simple to build. So now let's go to the pop over team leader. So as you can see, it's going to accept as users and the set users. So we could use state management, but I did this intentionally just to know how the props are working. Because I think in React, if you just start with state management from the right off bat, you will miss a lot of things in React, especially when dealing with some of the things that you want to change without using the state management, and you need to use the prompts as a result. Anyway, so let's go to the pop over team leader. So here we're going to use again the users and the set users prop. So this is the pop over. So we're going to have the button as a trigger. And whenever we are clicking on it, this is going to be actually triggered. So the team command list, it's going to be triggered. And of course, we're going to pass down again. So we're using this kind of the prop drilling principle, but I did this, as I said, intentionally just to know how the props are working. But normally, in best practices, I need to use a state management. So here we're going to pass down the users inside the team command list, again with the users and the set users. And then we are going to actually like render the command components from Shadcn, which is this whole component. So this is what it's going to be triggered to be able to show the component that I showed you. So here we are going again to go over each object in the users, and again we're gonna pass down again the single users into the user inside the single users component. And here, so this whole component is going to actually render each element. So we're going to render the icon, the name, and the role, but also we're going to render the button. So let's get into the single user functional component. So again, we're gonna render the icon, the username, and the role. And here we are going to render the buttons. So the button is going to be dependent on the is leader state. So if it is not a leader, so we are gonna just use this button with the circular plus icon. Otherwise, if it is a leader, we're going to use this icon from React Icons library, and the disable it's going to be true. So when we click on it, nothing's going to happen. So now let's go to the on-click event listener. So this actual function is going to be triggered whenever I click on this button. So when I click on here, so this function is going to be triggered. And what we're doing here, we are going to just update the isLeader property to true based on the user that is coming from the prompt at the top of the function. So if they are equal of the ID, meaning that it's the actual user that we clicked on, so the isLeader property is going to be true, and for the other ones are going to be false. So that's why we did use the set, or we passed down the set users constantly and the child component, so it could update the parent component, which is inside the step 2 component. So it's going to update this parent component, and that's why we see in the real time whenever I click on this, as you can see, it's going to happen for both team members and the team leader. So the is leader state or property is going to be changing since we are using the same user state for both components. So hopefully that you understood how this is working. And as you can see, everything is working fine for this step. So those are the components that we are going to be creating. So the next components that we're going to be adding are from for the step 3, and they're going to be a lot easier because I think that these components are the hardest components to build since they're using many things and many complex stuff, and we need to put them together to be able to create all of this. So now let's go to the third step, to the fields and the components for the third step. So the next element that we're going to be adding to the third step is the ability to add the tasks to the project. So we're going to have this part, and also at the bottom we're going to have this button. So when I click on select task, so we're going to have this dialog with this table. So we're going to use React tanstack table to be able to handle this. So when I select these two elements and I click on update task, so they're going to be added automatically. And when I open up again the dialog, so we're going to find again, the elements that we already selected are still selected just to know which one is selected and which is not. So let's go back to the VS Code, but first I'm going to open up Shadcn just to show you like first the actual libraries that we need to install first. So they are providing step-by-step documentation to be able to install tanstack table along with the table component that Shadcn uses. So first thing first, we need to install these two elements. So we need to install the table and we need to install the actual library from tanstack, as you can see. So all you have to do, just copy these and paste them into terminal and hit enter, and you are ready to go. So first here I have in the step 3.tsx, which is the main file, which is the main component that we're using for the actual step 3 component. But before I start talking about this component, first I want to just show you like what are the things that I need to do to be able to create our um, um, our table, sorry. So in the step 3 field, so first I'm going to show you the data. So this is the data that we're going to use in basically data that I showed you inside the table. So first we need to set up our structure of each task. So this is the structure of each task. So we're having the ID, the title, description, the due date, status, the priority is added or not, and the icon. And for the status and the priority, so we are going to create these custom types to define the literal types for each one. So this is for the status, this is for the priority. And finally, this is the objects of all the objects that we're going to be storing inside the tasks area. So after this, we're going to create the task columns. So this is the column. So as you can see, we're having a lot of code in here, but I'm going to start like here from the top. So these are the utility functions that we're going to be using inside the particular objects in the tasks column. So this is basically the type that we're going to use in. So this column div type is from tanstack library. So this is something that we are not gonna um that we're not interfere with. So basically, we're gonna just use the task type that we created. So this object is for the first one, which is so if I open up the table, so this is for the selection. So this is the object of it. Then we're having the title. So the title, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to extract the title from the row that original that title. We're going to extract the icon as well. And then we're going to return a JSX component inside the cell function, and this is what we're going to be returning, the icon and the title. So for the description, basically we're going to just return the row that original description, and we're going to add a span tag so you can be able to actually change the color of the text, as you can see. So it is not really dark, so it is gray because of this cell function. So we're having the due date. So here what we're going to do to be able to actually format the date like this. So we're going to use this format date function, and this it's going to accept the date as a prompt. And then we're going to do the this we're going to use this code so you can be able to actually change it in this format. So let's go back to our object and let's continue with this columns array. So basically here we're having this for the status. So first we need to extract the icon. So the icon is going to be extracted from the row that original that so we're gonna use this, and because in the render status icon, we're gonna use the switch statement. So I think that's in TypeScript. It is called a factory function, meaning that we need to take something from the prompt, and we are gonna kind of factor it out to something or make it as an output that is something different. So basically, we're gonna use the status, and here so we're doing this so we can be able to actually access to all the literal types that we defined inside the status property and the task type. So just to show you, like for example, if I do this, so we're going to have the completed literal type uh, provided for us by using the IntelliSense functionality from VS Code. So that's going to make the coding experience a lot fun, but also you will avoid having a lot of bugs into your code. So here, based on the status, we're going to return these icons. So this is for the not started, this is for the in progress, and this is for the completed. So that's why we're having here the different icons because of this function. So let's go back to our objects and let's continue. So here inside the return function, we're going to return this div. So based on the status icon, meaning that if it is not undefined, as you can see, it could be undefined. So we are going to safely use this block, and we're going to render the icon based on what we got as an output from the render status icons function. And we're going to use the status constant from what we are getting from this row that original dot status. So here we're going to have the priority. So the priority, it's going to follow the same structure. So here we're going to have this factory function. So we're going to return the actual icon based on whatever that we're having inside the priority. And if we go uh, at the bottom here, so we're going to return the same thing that we did for the GSX. We're going to do it for the priority. So the only thing that is going to be different are the name and the function that we use to be able to get the particular icon. So once I showed you how we created the task columns.tsx, so let me save this file. The next thing that I'm going to show you this is this task table. So this task table, so basically what I did, so if we go back to this documentation, so what I did, I just copied this, which is like they're telling us to create a data table, but eventually I did some different things just to be able to actually to adapt to what I'm having in my application. But the difference here, instead of using here as they're doing, they are using this use React table, so instead of using it within the function, so I'm going to use it outside of the function because there are going to be components that are going to share the use React table. So that's why I had to create it or add it inside the parent component, which is the step 3. So this is our use React table, and then we're going to take this table and here in the table component, um, as you can see, we are going to pass it down into the React. Um, so we're gonna pass it down. So let me go back to the task table. So it is called the task table. So we're gonna pass it down to the task table. So if we go to the task dialog, so actually, so that's why we are doing the table. So we are passing it down to the task dialog table, and then we're gonna use this table to be able to pass it down again to the task table. So there are two levels before we can access the task table. So this is for the task table, and eventually we're having the React table type. So that is coming from the tanstack table or a library, but I named it React table because it's going to interfere with the table that is coming from the table Shadcn component. So that's why I called it React table. And basically this component is going to stay the same. The only thing that is going to be different here, we are going to call the tasks column array that I showed you. We're going to use it directly. So now let's go to the dialog or the task dialog. So the task dialog, which is going to be this one. So here we're going to render all of these elements inside this component. So we are going to access to the table. We're going to access to the on tasks. I'm going to show you what it's doing. And also we're going to access to the open state parameter. So the open state parameter is an object of two child elements. The is open and the set is open because we want to link them to the dialog component, and we want this to be in the parent component, which is the step 3.tsx. So for the button, so we're having this for the button. So the button, it's going to be this one, which is the select task. So here, as you can see, we are just storing all the text inside one object. So the text button, it's going to be select task, as you can see. So this is what we're doing. So this is for the dialog text, and this is for the tasks table component that I showed you. And here at the bottom, we're having the dialog footer. So this is for the button to be able to close the dialog. And this is for the update task. And we're having this on-click event listener, which is on at task. So whenever we click on this button, so basically, so this on-click event listener, it's going to be actually triggered. And this is just a callback function that we are going to use in the parent component. So to be able to access to the on at task, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to the parent component again, and here we are, so I'm going to start from the from the task dialog component, which is this one. So this callback function is going to be linked to the onClicked add button. So this onClick add button, so this is the function that is going to be triggered. So we're going to update the all tasks uh, state by using the set all tasks. So we're going to update it from within. And what we're doing, we're going to update the is added. So the is added is going to be related to the selected tasks. this selected tasks, it's going to be by itself linked to the selected tasks constant, which means that we are going to use this row selection. And just to show you what this row selection does, so if we log this out, so as you can see, this kind of component, it's a little bit complex because we are using another library called tanstack. So if I, for example, if I select this, as you can see, this is the row selection object. So for each um, index, it's going to set it as true. So this is what is happening, and this is what's inside the row selection. So to be able to actually get the selected tasks, because it is using a different signature, so this is what we're using. We are going to actually access to the keys, and here we are going to map through each element and convert it to a number. And then we're going to use a map function. And based on the index inside the all tasks, we are going to filter if it is to filter the undefined values. And based on whatever that we are having as a return, which is going to be of type tasks as an array, we are going to use it inside the isAdded property. And finally, we are going to set is open as false to be able to actually close the dialog. So this is basically how we can be able to actually update the elements once we selected them. So finally, what I'm going to show you is these two elements. And when I click on this, what's going to happen and how to be able to show only the elements that we added. So here, first, I'm going to show you where this added tasks come from. So if we go at the top, so we're going to use this use memo hook. So instead of using the use effect, because we want to return something, we're going to use the use memo hook, and also for optimization purposes. So we're going to filter down the all tasks array based on the is task added property. And so this is the dependency that we're going to use, meaning that whenever this all tasks changes, this whole function is going to be updated, and basically we're going to return an array of type tasks. So we're going to use this, and if we go at the bottom, so we're going to use this, and we're going to map through each element, and we're going to call this component. So this component, it's going to have task as a property, the on delete task button, which is the function that is going to be triggered whenever I click on the close icon. And this function, it's going to actually accept all of these elements to be able to do the update. So if we go to the added task function, so it's going to be in another file just to make things organized. So this is the component. So it is a pretty simple component that is going to render this card. We're having the icon, the name, and the role, and the actual close icon. So and this is so we're having the task that icon, we're having the title, the priority, and we're having the iClose icon. And whenever we are clicking on it, so we're going to trigger this on delete task button function. So this is so if we go here, so this is going to actually um, trigger this on delete task button callback, and by itself it's going to trigger this handle delete clicked task. So this function, it is also inside this function. So it's going to accept all of these elements so you can be able to update our all tasks array based on whatever that we're having in the prompts. So here we are going, so this is the steps that we're going to do. We are going to copy the row selections, which is the thing that I showed you inside the log function. And here we're going to extract the tasks index, and then we are going to update the all tasks by using the updated tasks. And if the task index is uh, has a number, meaning that we found the task index, we're going to actually delete it from the update row selection. So we're going to use this delete function, and we're going to update the row selection. So this is why we are using all of these elements inside this handle delete section select collect task. So as you can see, there are a lot of things going on in this actual component, but everything is working fine. So the next thing that I did, I added the fields for the step number 4. So these are going to be the fields for the steps. We're going to have this uh, total budget. So as you can see, so the formatting is going to be done automatically, and we're going to use a library called React Number Format to make things easier for us rather than doing it by ourselves. We're having this drop down to be able to choose whether it is a fixed or hourly billing cost tracking method. And finally, we're going to have this text area for the resource allocation. So let's go back to the VS Code to show you how we did to be able to create this. So the first thing that I did, I created this new folder called step for fields. We are going to be storing inside of it all the elements or the fields inside each own component or file. So we're having this total budget.tsx. So here, as you can see, we're going to have the $sign, which is going to be absolute, so you can be able to freely position it within this part. So, and here we're having the numeric format component that is coming from the React number format library. So also make sure to copy this and install it inside your project to be able to use this component. So we're going to add the placeholder, the value, and the custom input. It's going to be the input from Shadcn. We're going to use the 1000 separator option, and finally we're going to use the class name to make the height a little bit bigger. So we're going to use the H and a little bit of margin at the top and the Poppins font to be able to actually apply the fonts for this custom component. And finally, we're having at the bottom the place where we're going to be showing the error. And here we're having the cost tracking. So the cost tracking, we're going to use the select component from Shadcn. So eventually we're going to use the state to be able to store whatever that we are clicking on. So it's going to be default fixed budget. And here after the label, we're having the select component. The default value is going to be fixed budget. The value is going to be selected method. So we're going to link the value of the select component with the state that we created up here, and the on value change, it's going to be linked to the set selected method. And here we're having the trigger element to be able to actually trigger the select component. And finally, inside the select content, we're having the selected the select items, which are the fixed budget and the hourly billing item. And finally, we're having the resource allocation. So we're going to use the text area. So if you remember, we're going to use the same logic that we use for the project description and the field number 1. So if we go in here, so as you can see, so it is the same logic. So the only thing that is going to be different are the names to adjust it to the context of the step. And finally, in the step number 4, so we're going to call all of these components in here, and this is how we are going to do this to be able to actually render all the components in the step number 4. So the next element and the final step here, which is the review and launch. So we're gonna here what we're gonna be doing is reviewing all the elements that we choose before the user can click on the launch project. And finally, this is the final step. So this is how it's going to look like. Um, and this is the simple design to be able to review each part. So this one is for the project overview, which is the first step, and this part is for the second step, this part for the third, and this part for the fourth step. So now, as you can see, our design of the multi-step form is completed. So I'm going to show you very quickly how to be able to create this, which is a simple thing to do. So of course, this is the step number 5.tsx, the functional components. So we're going to be adding all of these components, and these components, um, as I did for the other steps, they're going to be saved in this step 5 fields. So for each step, I put it in its own file. So first, what I'm doing, I'm creating this object, and then we are going to use this card component. So this card is going to come from the Shadcn component. So again, make sure to install it from Shadcn by uh, searching for card, and this is the CLI command to be able to install this into your project. So after this, we can be able to use the card component, and here we're going to go through the step 1 data array, and then we're going to for each element, we're going to render the label and the value. So, and these are the stylings that we're going to be using for our for each card to be able to get that kind of design with the gray background and some borders of the card. So eventually we're going to do the same thing for each step. So the only thing that is going to be different is the data. So as you can see, we're using the same logic inside the GSX and the same for the step number 3. So here it's going to be a little bit different because the task, so we're going to use the same structure of each tag in the object to be able to actually render this out like this. So this card that's going to be for each task. So we need to actually use the same structure of data that we used for the task. And finally, we're having the step number 4, which is the overview of the elements that are related to the fourth step, which is the budget and the resource. And finally, we need to render this, so we're gonna use it inside the step number 5.tsx. So as you can see, our multi-step form UI is finished. So the next thing that we are gonna be doing is to make sure that this is working, and we're gonna use React Hook form library along with Zod to make sure that all the fields are are filled before we can actually submit this. And with the multi-step form logic, so it's going to be a little bit challenging to be able to create this because it's not like any form. So there are a lot of things going on that we need to add, and we need to add some logic to make sure that this is going to work for us.